Hope you're doing well on this Tuesday morning, March the 22nd. It's actually our first edition of Honest Conversations in springtime. That's right, over the weekend we changed seasons from winter till spring. And we're going to have a fresh program today. We're always excited to have these two visionary leaders in our community, Kev and Jay, and what an interesting conversation every week with Honest Conversations. Let's go live now to the WIDU Community Room for this week's edition of Honest Conversations.
Well, thank you, Wesley. Wes? That wasn't Wesley. I made a mistake already. We're going to start over. Can we start over? No. Thank you, Wes. Always and I didn't know it was springtime. I did not know it was spring. So I really...
This guy, man, I know, right? I know. I see you over there, brother.
I'm sorry. I am sorry. And there's Wesley over there on the boards. We have a really good show today. Before we get to the show, Kev, how are you? Good morning, Kev.
I'm gorgeous. Wish I looked like it, man. And good morning to you. Good morning to the listening audience as well.
Yes.
I haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
It's felt like it's been a while since we've all
haven't
been
seen
here.
you in like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen Marco.
And I'm looking at Marco, and honestly, when Marco walked in today, I didn't recognize him. And honestly, I'm going to just say this. I thought he had a hairpiece. Is that inappropriate to say on the air?
Why would I have a
He's
hairpiece
too young
going
for a hairpiece.
long to short?
Well, that is a good point.
I think it'd be the other way around.
Thank you very much.
Unless you had a bear haircut.
And Marco is really being he's pushing back today a little bit. There's a little pushback I'm feeling.
Marco's
Took 2 weeks off. I'm a changed man.
Actually,
he is a changed man.
I'm interested to see how you'll evolve over the next few months. You have something big coming up soon. Graduation.
Yeah, I was about to say, what do I have? Graduation.
Graduation. He's going to have another hairstyle in 2 months.
Yeah, probably.
Hey, you won't be able to see it at graduation day.
I probably won't cut it for another. I don't know. It's been since
couple
summer
years
since I cut it. So,
So when you
probably another half a year before I cut it.
So you went into the barbershop. What was your request?
Cut it short, leave it a little longer on the top.
Longer on the top. I remember those days when I had hair. That was so wonderful to walk into the barber and say, yeah, a little longer on top. There ain't nothing on top for about 30 years.
There's a little something up there.
Very little. It's like sprouting, something sprouting up there. I did want to say something before we bring on our guest, if I could. And Kevin has said 60
Marco,
seconds.
And go.
Time.
All right.
I am a little frustrated. I know politics are politics, but what's going on with Ketanji Brown Jackson and several senators, Marsha Blackburn and Josh Hawley, is to me just outrageous. Marsha Blackburn has already started with the 1619 and CRT. It's just the same old rhetoric that we hear, the same talking points. And Josh Hawley talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson being soft on crime and very liberal with the predators. Well, if you look at the record, she is following the sentencing guidelines like all of the other judges. It's outrageous. It is politics. And all I want to say here is, can we do better?
That's not politics.
Can we do better?
That's not politics. That's willful ignorance.
Willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say willful ignorance and politics
And
because
Some might say that is politics. So.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yes,
think
especially now.
it is now. I mean, there's no
And
bipartisan.
there's no one side or other
No,
side
it isn't.
against. Yes,
it's just
yeah.
everybody gets everyone. But anyway, I had to say that because I'm just infuriated about both sides. Anyway, let's go to the show
Infuriated?
today.
Infuriated.
Infuriated.
Wow.
Is that not a good word?
I mean, it's a word.
My gosh.
A lot of
Says
syllables in that one.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Infuriated. Okay.
Let's go.
So let's go with the show here today. So let me talk about our guest, who's Sean Andrews. But first, let me talk about Andrews Counseling and Consulting. It was founded in 2016 by Travis and Anthony Andrews. These two brothers were raised in the small town of East Arcadia. I don't know where the heck that is.
I've been there.
Which is located outside of Wilmington, NC. In their community, the idea of speaking to a therapist was highly unpopular, thus causing many of the mental health challenges faced by the community to go unaddressed. They both witnessed how damaging the negative stigma of mental health treatment was to their community and vowed as adults to advocate for mental health awareness, especially in the African American community. So with us today is Sean and Anthony Andrews. Do we have Anthony on the phone?
I'm here. Good morning.
Okay, and
There you
that's Dr. Anthony Andrews, okay? So we have Dr. Andrews, who will talk to us a little bit about
I
himself.
think
But
there's
I
a
have-
few Dr. Andrews in here in this group too, right?
Yeah. There's
A couple.
Doctor, and Sean, maybe one day, Doctor? Is that the...
One day.
One day, okay.
Real soon.
So Sean used to work for Norfolk Southern Railroad. You were not a conductor, though.
No. I was
You're
their,
not-
I was their boss.
You were the boss, so he was not conducting the train. I always wanted to be a conductor. Education, you...
It's a hard job, man.
It is. Also, you were in education. You taught at NCCU, which was I was an alum. I did
wow.
my
You
undergraduate.
You were an alum? You are an
Oh,
alum?
I am an alum.
Okay.
There's a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of there's a lot of correcting on this show today. Could we just go on without correcting one of the hosts?
No.
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 Anyway, so Anthony, do you want to just share just a little bit about yourself before we talk about what you guys are doing and how important what you're doing is in the community? Dr. Andrews.
Sure. So yeah, again, Dr. Anthony Andrews, glad to be here. I hold my background is in rehabilitation counseling. I specialize in addiction, trauma-informed care. Of course, we service individuals, couples, and families. Like you said, I am from East Arcadia, North Carolina, a small town. Really not too far from Fayetteville, maybe about an hour, 45 if you go a little above the speed limit. Yeah, I'm just ecstatic to be here. I did receive my bachelor's at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina,
Okay.
and both my master's and doctorate at North Carolina A&T State University.
Yeah, you probably.
Great. Where are you located
Right.
now, Dr. Andrews? Where's your main location?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. I love Charlotte, North Carolina. So, Kev, do you want to start off?
Well, I want to welcome both of you to the show and as well as the whole company. As a brother sitting here, I know people who work in mental health. I know that across the country we've been trying to address mental health as a whole, as a real deal thing, and to say the least, we don't talk about it. Amongst the black community up until recently. I know quite a few people now who are getting more involved, but it's still that translation between are you crazy? Are you just bothered? Is it historical? Is it something that's coming traumatized from the family? Yeah. That type of stuff. So to see, your group addressing this in such a holistic way, it is really key, because I think it does change the way that people address, mental health, mental awareness based off who the persons are they're talking to. So I just want to say thank you to the whole entire family, because you got two brothers and a cousin, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
appreciate that,
Yep.
and just seeing that alone is still a big deal.
We appreciate it. Definitely.
question.
Definitely.
So one of the things that I have heard, and I think you mentioned it, and we talked about it in the intro, is just this stigma with
Yeah.
mental health.
Yep.
And as a white guy, I know that early on in my life, when I was having, I'm going to just be very honest, I had some issues growing up, sort of a little bit of anger management. You'd never know that today. Would you know that today? Would you even think about that? But I did.
You just said you called yourself infuriated, so maybe
Well,
you
okay.
still have a little
anyway,
of that.
but I seriously had some anger management questions. First thing my mother said is, I remember this. Let's call Betty Levinson, Dr. Levinson, psychologist. I was
famous.
probably in. She's not famous. No
She
one
is famous.
No, she's not. She's local. She's dead now. Just thought I'd bring that up. But Dr. Levinson, I went into therapy, and we didn't think much about it. Now I was a little embarrassed by it, because but the point was, it was the first reaction of my parents to go to a therapist, to send Jay to a therapist, and I'm totally open about it. I'm on anti-anxiety medications now. I've been on anti-anxiety medications more specifically since I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I'm on a relatively high dosage. So talk about that in the African American community. And talk about your story if you can, Sean.
Yeah, definitely. When we take a look at stigma, it is something that is pervasive in our community, with the negative stigma. And, growing up, especially in the South, so as a man, you have like three things working against you with mental health. It's the culture, it's the Christianity, and it's your masculinity. And so these three things, so I played football from 8th grade all the way up into college. And, there was a motif, there was a personality that had to fit with who I was. And a lot of times everything had to be based in the strength of who I was, physically, mentally, all these different things. So weakness wasn't allowed. And I didn't learn until much later the impact of holding these things in. And even sharing things now as men, it's like even within our weakness, we have to encapsulate it in strength. A lot of times we don't talk as black men, but if we listen to rap songs, I remember Jay-Z had a song talking about a song cry. He didn't even want to just claim himself as having that weakness.
I'm gonna make the song cry.
I'm gonna make the song cry.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the song cry. And so now even you have a lot of factors that that support that negative stigma. If there's something wrong with you, if you go and tell someone, especially being everyone's in church, they tell you to go pray about it. But a lot of times, that may be a cause of some of the things that you're going through, religion, so it's kind of like a catch-22 there. And then, from, being an athlete and going through all these things, it's very, very difficult to show that weakness. And so how do we begin to make a safe space for young folks? And so that's why I think we're so important and so critical to allow young black men to have that space to share and kind of operate within a mindset of wholeness.
It's funny to know that and to hear you say that, but then you guys went a step further. Again, you created a business model out of this. So, and I guess this question will, I'll let you answer this one, Anthony. When you decided to make this an actual company or a business, or to make this, I'm not sure if you call it a movement, but to make this step in the direction of a consulting firm, what was that like?
Yeah, so, we started to realize growing up what was actually in our community. Mental health was never talked about. Any issue you had, it was always kind of shoved under the rug. We noticed substance abuse or substance use disorders in our community. We noticed generational trauma. We noticed the historical trauma. But I cannot tell you that I've ever seen or remembered a therapist growing up when I was younger. So even the idea of how to find one, how to talk to one, what a therapist was, and the only depiction of a therapist that we had was actually a white male with someone sitting on a couch that you would see on TV. It was never really in our community.
Dr. Phil.
So Dr. Phil. So that pushes individuals away. Well, maybe that's not for me. And so even go back to stigma, there's two things that are associated with it when you talk about the intersectionality of black people in therapy. Now, we already know that there's a stigma across different cultures about mental health. And as many of you may know, John F. Kennedy signed into law in 1963 a mental health act that kind of put community around mental health. But prior to that, anytime you had a mental health disorder, the idea was you to go into a psychiatric hospital. So you have the stigma associated with mental health, where someone being in a straitjacket, and you see everything depicted in these horror films that somebody's escaping from this psychiatric ward,
Cartoons,
and that was how mental health was viewed for so long. Now you couple that with being black and having a mental health disorder, and you have the double whammy there, where you're now being associated with being weak and have to do more by your race, and also being looked at or being looked down upon because of your mental health disorder. So, like I said, the visibility is not there. So even from now, we started a movement, or an agency rather, that we're going to be vulnerable and share our stories and talk about, traumas that we have dealt with, things that we have been experienced, things that we've experienced. And that opens up the door for our clients, especially we try to push to our black men to say that it's okay. It's okay to come to therapy, and we have to be the ones that be transparent and try to efface that stigma that's associated with mental health.
Wow. So I'm going to clear my throat when I ask you about this one right here. Last summer, you guys put on this, I'm not sure what to call it, program, initiative, the misdiagnosis of the Negro. And, you know, one of the books that I read early on was A Miseducation of the Negro. And went on from there to start studying W.E.B. Du Bois. You know, it was trying to figure it out, right? You knew something wasn't right. Yeah. But you guys made a play off that last year. And, you know, how did that go? I mean, how did it come about? How did it go? You know, what did you learn from that initiative? Yeah,
well, Dr. Anthony, it's funny because we wanted to create this conference, and we were thinking about a name, something that was a kind of akin to what was going on. And when we take a look at, my background, and Jay mentioned, so I was an educator. And one of the things, I taught 7th grade social studies for a couple of years. And, had no experience in education, coming from corporate management, so I was kind of thrown in the classroom. And one of the things that I saw in the education system, I was telling one of my friends, I said, there's something rather nefarious going on with our young black men, because a lot of times there were not proper support systems set up. The young men, by the time they're 7th and 8th grade, a lot of them look like grown men. And so a lot of the teachers were white women. And that those intrinsic fears will present themselves by wanting to send them to the office, put them on medication, and the administration supported these things. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, this is crazy, because a kid can come in and he can just kind of have a bad day and they want to send him to the principal's office. And so it kind of fast-tracked, and then I was with my cousins and we were thinking about this conference, and I'll let Dr. Anthony share. He came up with the actual title of it, and it fits so perfectly in kind of what we're seeing with mental health and also in education as well, and also different realms where black men are being brutalized and victimized.
Let me just ask you, where was this, where could people see this? Was this a play?
Oh no, it was a conference.
A conference, and where was that play? Where was the conference?
So it was virtual. We had
virtual, and when was it?
This was last summer.
Well attended? Did you have a bunch of folks attending?
Yeah, it was very good, very well.
Yeah, we did. It was a lot of people in attendance. We held it virtually. That probably was a good part of it, where individuals were able to come out. I know it was during COVID, so a lot of individuals, they weren't trying to do it in person. But we had a large attendance. It was very good. Like I said, people were able to present on different topics, on different research topics about within the conference, and really speak to the misdiagnosis. Because a lot of individuals that we see, we're talking about young black men as well, are diagnosed often with ADHD, ODD, when in fact a lot of these symptoms are trauma responses. So an individual can have PTSD from their environment, from divorces in the home, from seeing community balance, and now they may have an inability to stay focused. They may have defiance in the school, but many individuals are being labeled or misdiagnosed these things, and nobody's looking at the trauma, the ecological trauma about what are you viewing when you step outside your home.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're gonna take a break, but I want you to definitely expand on that when we come back on the other side. I want to add something to that too as well. So we'll be right back in a few minutes. Let's pay some bills.
You've been listening to Honest Conversations on the WIDU Radio Network. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, Wes. Thank you, Wes.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate that.
Here's your cookie for getting that right.
Always a great intro. We appreciate that. And you've been joined today. We have Andrews Counseling and Consulting. We have Sean Andrews. We have Dr.
Anthony
Andrews, not Dr. Phil. I was saying Dr. Phil. Dr. Anthony Andrews. And it's been a really interesting conversation so far. I had a question. How are you getting into these communities and having conversations either with the schools, with the young people, and talking about these issues honestly, and talking with the parents maybe? How do we change the conversation in the African American community and not make it so don't stigmatize counseling and all this stuff.
Yeah, and before I get into that, I do want to shout out Dr. Travis Andrews as well.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't mentioned him a lot, so I just want to shout him out.
That's Anthony's brother.
Yeah, Anthony's brother. Yeah,
Wow,
just
doctor and doctor. Do you have, Anthony, is it just you and your brother, or do you have other siblings?
Yes, we have 2 younger siblings as well, but for the doctors is me and Travis.
Okay, there's a lot of pressure on those younger siblings. A lot of pressure. Okay, Sean, you were about to say something.
Yeah. So, we have locations in North Carolina, but we recently expanded into Kentucky in October. So, from a level 0, not knowing anyone, and so one of the things that we're seeing now is that stigma, and people, they're very concerned about, especially the titles, right? So when we come in and say we're offering, mental health services for their children, the first thing is, there's nothing wrong with my kid.
Yeah.
They're fearful of the label, and
Defensive.
exactly, and deservedly so, given the history of minorities in this country, right? So one of the things that we do, we come in from a place of transparency, that we are here, and we all have our own therapists, all of us, and so coming in and letting them know exactly what it is, what we're there to do, and just being honest with them. I think so many times, a person would come in and it would be a white person that would sit down and say, okay, well, I'm going to evaluate your child, and immediately as a black parent, black or brown parent, it's like there's apprehension there. And so for us coming in, just with us being from the culture, looking like them, opens the door for us slightly, but we also have to be honest and forthright and forthcoming with them with what we're offering.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on something that you started off with there. People being taken back when you say mental health services or going to therapy, in the negative connotation. It shouldn't. I mean, people go to therapy even if you don't have any issues you need to talk about. It's like going to the gym. You're working out your your mental health.
You want to preserve your health.
Yeah.
Your mental health. Yeah.
It's not just something you need to do when things are bad.
Right. It's probably good to do.
I think that's
probably good to do. That's a very good point. Very good point.
Dr. Anthony, you were saying something?
No, what I call them is oil changes. No matter what car you drive, whatever condition it's in, you're going to need that oil change eventually, right? So that's how I kind of pitch it to individuals, like, hey, just come in and get a checkup. Just as you would the doctor, who, if you had a physical issue or you wanted to check on to make sure that you were doing well in the physical arena, you want to make sure that you are good mentally as well. And now it's really about that trust and providing that psychoeducation about what these disorders are, what they do. And, of course, historically, a lot of people in our community have that mistrust there because of past experiences. So when someone of color is able to educate them on that diagnosis or educate them on that IEP plan or educate them on that 504 plan, most parents and individuals, especially our black and brown people, they are able to take more into what we are actually telling them because the trust is there.
I just had one other quick question. Is there any common themes or common issues that young black boys, in particular, kids in elementary school, maybe in junior high, not junior high, middle school, are facing? Is there something that you hear more frequently than not when folks are talking to these young black boys, especially?
So for me, coming from education and now being in mental health with my family, one of the biggest things is fatherlessness. And so a lot of issues are stemming from that, from self-esteem, and then being in these, we really focus in low socioeconomic neighborhoods, and so the trauma that's there, you're talking about it, like for instance in Kentucky, in our group we have these groups where we go in and we provide services, and they're revolving around music. But one of their classmates and friends was killed about 2 weeks ago, and they're walking around with their friends' picture on the shirt. Like, we did not, that was unheard of when I was a kid. And these things are normalized. So a lot of this trauma is normalized, and you're thinking like, these are the formative years that they're growing. Their brains are developing, that they're developing ideas about who they are and what they want to do. And that's being mixed in with all of these traumatic situations. And so those are the things, and Dr. Anthony can kind of expound on that, but a lot of those, the things that we see, a lot of those mental maladies are coming from, a lot of these environments.
Interesting. Dr. Anthony, do you want to expound?
Well, no, just to piggyback, it has been normalized. It's normalized in the music. It's normalized sometimes in just the culture period, that we are to be okay and just get up and just keep moving when death occurs. And I have to really, express to people that this is not normal to see someone get shot, or to be in the community with someone and they're not there anymore all of a sudden. This is not normal. But the issue is the emotions that are accepted is anger versus, sadness and expressing that. So you have a kiddo come in and, saying that, they're not sad about a situation, that they're angry about a situation, but then you start talking to them and all the sadness and the hurt and the depression comes out. But they're not able to identify that. So being able to identify feelings with young black men is probably the most important thing, so they can know exactly what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes, or oftentimes, when we hear the word father or fatherless, we automatically assume that the father isn't there physically. And sometimes the father is there. Sometimes he's around. But you're talking about a history of black men not knowing how to or where to address trauma. When I first learned of PTSD, it came behind the Gulf War. And when I saw all the symptoms of what PTSD was, I'm like, well, if those are the symptoms, then most of the black men I know have some variation of PTSD because of the things that we've experienced. And that's not to say, too much into that, because that's a whole nother show. But what we can do about it now is what I tell parents now, have an example, even if it's not a father, if he's not the kid's father, have some sort of example to give him some sort of semblance to manhood, or what to do with this anger, or just somebody that can say, hey, you might need to go see somebody. Yeah. So have you how are you guys handling that when you hear the fatherless thing, or I don't know, are you able to address that at all?
Yeah, definitely. That is something that we see and we do address. And it's interesting. So whenever I began teaching at North Carolina Central, my very first week at the university, this young man scheduled some time on my calendar, and he was a 21-year-old football player. And he came in and he said, Mr. Andrews, I have a question for you. And he closed my door, and I'm thinking he got somebody pregnant. What I'm saying? Right. But he asked me, he said, what does it mean to be a man? Now, this young brother, he had a very successful mother from Atlanta. She gave him everything in the world. But he was coming in at 21 years old, and he said, what does it mean to be a man? Since teaching, I probably was asked that about 20 times from young men from 20 to 23 years old. And so I think a lot of times our understanding of manhood is wrapped in a lot of things that manhood is not. So for instance, we think about when I play football, right? It's like you got to be a beast, right? Mm-hmm. Even Lil Wayne said, I'm a goon, I'm a goblin, like all these different things. Yeah. Like we take it outside of the human characteristics and say, well, I am something that is impenetrable. I don't have feelings, I'm vicious and all these things. And those things are very, very toxic. And so having not only a father or a man in your life, but someone, a mentally healthy, someone that is centered that can guide that young man, because there are toxic and negative examples of that can be guided. So that's very, very important.
Wow.
Yes.
So
Marco?
Counseling and consulting. So you obviously do the counseling side, and then consulting. You go into schools, you go into businesses. What do you guys do with that?
Definitely. So there are a couple of things, and I'll let Dr. Anthony explain as well. But going in and speaking with young folks, DEI training. So going in, individuals or organizations that serve minority youth, because a lot of times folks who are not in the community will think they have an idea about how to properly serve these populations, but they just need a little guidance. And so in speaking as well, like that's one of the big things that we are, pushing out and want to going to schools, but also with our groups coming into schools and having those for school systems and communities that are dealing with issues like, violent crime and things like that.
I had a question. One of the things that I've talked to some folks about, my daughter teaches in a, is it called low wealth school? What do they call those? It's just
tier one. Tier one.
Tier
one. I'm gonna go with the
it's free lunch.
Answer.
I hear, it's like 100% free lunch. So one of the things that's interesting is the mentoring and is the folks coming into the school. I have read stories many times to the kids, and I love doing that. I do it on Zoom. I've been in the classroom. What's a little disappointing to me, and I want to talk about the mentoring, is I see white folks coming into some of these schools. I want to see more black parents coming into the school. And this is just my observation. I don't know if this is a common thing, but the other piece is also the mentoring aspect. When there's such a need for mentoring these young people in the schools, there's so many successful black folks, women and men in the community. What can we do to get more people in these schools? Because you said it already. People want to see people that look like them. Yeah. When I go into a school and mentor, which I would love to do, when I'm mentoring that young black kid, which I've done before, and I've made a connection, I think it's more effective possibly if it's a black man or a black woman. So what are we doing to make that happen and to get more energy behind that? Because it really is important at a younger age.
Yeah. Jay, I appreciate you wanting me to come on and critique black people on your show.
And that is not what this is about.
I'm over here trying to back away from the mic.
Yeah, like, here you go, Sean. Be a martyr.
No, it's my observation, and I want it's why we call
it's
this
honest
show.
Conversations.
No, it's honest. Look, I think you have to take a look at it at a few different points. It's almost like some of the things are too close to your face to realize that they're there. So in the community, when you see the young folks, it's easy to say, well, I made it out of this traumatic environment. So for instance, even in teaching, for instance, right? So we don't have a lot of black men in teaching. But if you are a young, smart black man or black male growing up, what do they tell you to do, especially if your family is poor? What do they tell you?
Basketball, NBA.
Basketball, but also what?
Rap.
Get out.
Go get out.
Lawyer, doctor.
Oh, yeah.
They're not going to tell you to become, they're not going to tell you to become a teacher.
No. True.
Yeah, and so even in the fabric of our conversations, it is you must lift the family up.
Yeah.
Within that conversation, it's not going to mentor. Whereas opposed to white folks, it might be, you all operate in a kind of a different, you're on the means of production. Right? So it's a little different where you can be more comfortable and really identify, wow, I can take time to go into this school. And I'm not saying that's an excuse, but that might be in some communities where, if you are a person who is struggling just to make it, you are so mentally drained, and especially with seeing all these things like George Floyd, like you're not even in the place. You need to be mentored.
There's trauma.
It's a good point.
You're looking at yourself. It's like you still. It's sometimes for people, it's like going through it all over again. When they're trying to go back into those communities and stuff like that. So
I I appreciate that answer because it does help me, put context into it, and I'm, I can only tell you through my lens, what I've seen, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's similar to another conversation I've had where people were talking about how there's not a lot of people of color in like graduate programs and PhD programs in the sciences. And it's because a lot of people are saying, don't They're saying don't go to the PhD. The money's not there.
Yeah.
You want to go into the private sector and, go that route. And that's why it's not the entire reason. There's still some bias, but that's one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of people of color in that sort of field.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot. People don't.
Right.
You don't change who you are and what you've been through just because you want to go to the next level. You bring that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dr. Anthony wants to say something. Dr. Anthony.
Yeah, it was just, just listening and, thinking about the ecological environment of those who have been without for so long, that they're being pushed. Education is not something really to, like you said, better yourself. It's to, like Sean was saying, better the entire family. And we've been oppressed for so long that you have to make it. You have to go do something that's so lucrative that it's going to come and take care of a family that may have been oppressed for so long. So, that mentorship is for sure a huge issue. And we realize that within therapy, because we know that therapy for black men and women isn't the same when it comes to providing therapy for different cultures, because we know that when counseling black people, black young men and women, that it requires another level of mentorship infused within that therapy. So, I've been to football games in the crowd, just sitting there, just because I promised that young man that I was going to come and watch his game because nobody else was there when we were talking about Bob's home. So going above and beyond, doing a little bit more for that child than you would do in a regular session, because that they need it so badly, and that's a part of that process as well.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm glad you and Sean, you brought this up too. Like, I was talking to someone, an older person, and we were talking about rap music, and they were talking about, I just don't understand. I was like, it's not for you to understand. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you got to know your place and know your role when you're trying to address certain things. These same people, these same young people that are out here rapping these lyrics, they're trying to get money. Yeah. They'll say anything that they think will give them money to take them out of a situation that may or may not be for me to judge if it's good, bad, what you should do and all that stuff. But these are still there, and they're getting younger and younger, and have not been through any counseling. They have not had anybody sit across with them to talk to them about certain inalienable things as human beings. Yeah. So they don't understand the cause and effect when they're in their call. I'm doing this to make money, and I have a talent, and I make the money. They're not necessarily thinking about the effects of it until they're involved with it, and it's oftentimes too late.
And can I piggyback on that before Sean answers? What are your thoughts about, and is gangster rap even still really exist?
We didn't make that title.
Okay. But is there, so the negativity that I see in rap, and the negativity in some rap, not all rap, what are your thoughts about that with young black men in this country, and what kind of impact do you think that has, either negatively or positively?
Yeah, when you take a look at things it's like gangster rap, it is a reflection of the oppression. Yeah. Like, you can't stick people in a neighborhood, pull out the resources, put in policies that are going to separate the families, and then say, be happy and flourish. Right. There is no way. And so when a young man says, I will kill myself, I will kill you, and everybody give me the money, we have to look at that, and we can even take a look at historically when the Europeans were selling for God, guns, and glory. Glory, God?
I think you got it right.
Glory, yeah. When they were selling for that, if they could, we could make a song about them. That would be gangster rap too. Exactly. So we can't vilify these young black men for reflecting what they see. And it is more a condition of, is more of a temperature of what is going on and what needs to be addressed. Because if a baby is crying, you don't get mad at the baby for crying. You figure out why the baby is crying.
And you don't give them liquor instead of giving them milk.
Exactly.
And there we go. So I love the music because it tells that story. It tells about the trauma and the environment. It's giving us a picture of exactly where they are in that space. My issue is the coping mechanisms that come with it and that are said within the music, whether that's drinking lean, whether that's popping pills, doing drugs. So we already see right there, there's an inability to know how to cope. So our job is to come in, okay, well, let's replace these behaviors with maybe going to therapy, meditation, yoga, mindfulness, the gym, writing, journaling that they're already doing. But, we have to replace those negative coping skills with some positive ones. And so the expression is the expression, but it's how we're coping with it.
And we got to stop letting the older people, the more educated people, saying make certain things feel like they're only for certain people.
Yeah.
Like he mentioned the word yoga, and we'll be doing a program soon with the nonprofit on yoga, like introducing them to yoga. Just the concept of what is it? Why are people doing it? You understand what I'm saying?
Introduce them to goat yoga, which I've done. You're actually with goats. And no, I've done that. It's called goat yoga. Have you heard that?
My sister has done that as well.
It is actually really cool. Goat yoga, little baby goats.
Yoga is great, though. It's really relaxing.
And they got to stop associating that with only certain people go to yoga. Only certain people,
white people,
like we're talking about,
white
like
people
counseling.
go to yoga.
Only certain people go to counseling. Only certain people. My daughter at I think she was 13. Her friend tried to kill herself.
Yeah. And
I have another daughter who's was being sexually abused by somebody in her home. And my daughters were, they're 13, 14 years old, you know what I'm saying? So if they came to me and said, hey, Dad, I need to talk to somebody, okay, we got somebody already for you to talk to. It's changed. My mom would have been like, boy, and then not to put anything on my mom, she might not have known, I don't know, I didn't go through that. But when you look at poetry in itself, a lot of people go to poetry as a means of self-expression to get it off their chest, so to speak. The last poets, Gil Scott Heron, we can go on and on.
Tupac,
for sure. The rose will grow through the concrete. That's 6 words, you know what I'm saying? But, it's saying a lot in that, and what we're seeing right now with Kanye West as well.
Yeah.
And I've been battling some brothers
mental health.
back and forth,
a lot of mental health issues
and
with Kanye.
the placement of mental health, too.
Yeah. I did want to say, we only have about 3 minutes, and maybe a little less. You have an app. Can you talk about what that app is for before we end our show today? And thank Dr. Andrews. Talk very quickly about the app, and then we'll get last questions from Marco and Mr. Kev.
Okay, super quick. Yeah, so I developed an app. I left corporate America to develop an app around mental health, and it's called Inspiring You, and it's the Pandora for mental health. And basically what we do is we provide anonymous mental health care to individuals, or mental health support to individuals 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, utilizing culturally relevant content and music. And yeah, that's it.
That's dope. That's dope.
It's awesome.
It's very exciting. I'm going to go to Marco, and I'm going to go to Kev.
No, we'll let Dr. Andrews.
And Dr. Andrews.
I'm going to let him have my time.
Okay, Dr. Andrews, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listening audience, and how folks might get in contact with Andrews Counseling and Consulting?
Sure. So you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. That's Andrews Counsel, PLLC. And our website is www.andrewscounselpllc.com. So we are excited about it. Check out our website for more information. We do have the 2nd annual Misdiagnosis of the Negro coming up this June. So we're going to have an official date mid-June at the end of this week. So we'll be pumping that out, and we're planning on taking this to different cities as well. So we're looking forward to
We'll host you here. I got you.
Yeah, that is great. Marco, any final words?
No, just want to thank both you guys for being on. And if you guys want to hear more from Kev Jay, you can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook at WIDU 1600 AM and on Instagram and TikTok at with Kev Jay.
And you've been listening to Honest Conversations with Kev Jay on the WIDU
Thank you, teacher.
Radio Network. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
And thank you so much for listening.